So you're a beginning woodworker, you're home from work at the end of the day, you've had your meal, you just want to head out into the shop and make a little sawdust, burn off a little steam, have a little fun and learn something. Or maybe you're a lot more experienced woodworker in the same situation and you just want to spend an hour or two experimenting with different techniques and refining your skill level, but you don't want to get into a big project that you'll have to carry on. You just want to be able to finish it in an hour or so. Have I got a project for you? Today, let's go out in the shop and make some ducks. Now when I'm at various art markets on the weekend, I always like to take some kind of woodworking thing to do a demonstration on. It not only makes the time go by faster, but it seems to build up the value of what I'm selling. When people see me actually doing it, see what it takes to make a lot of the stuff, they don't think it's just throwaway items. And normally I'll do like tops or boxes and stuff like that, but sometimes when I'm running low on materials, I'll do a project that will take me longer than 30 seconds to a minute. And commonly I'll do these little ducks. And the thing is, when you're doing live demonstrations, as strange as it sounds, your technique becomes a lot more important, especially for people that don't know what you're doing. Because if you're spending a whole bunch of time making one little thing, that's boring for them to see. They want to see the big cuts, and the big cuts require good skills and sharp tools. They don't know that, but you do. So it's good practice. And when you're doing live demonstrations, it's really boring watching people sand. So sandpaper is not allowed. So today I'm going to walk you through my techniques for making these inexpensive little ducks. It's probably the simplest form of offset turning there is. You don't need any special jigs. If you can just drill a hole and you have a screw chuck, you're just fine. Now in this demonstration, I'm going to be using this Niles kind of aluminum faceplate. I use this a lot for turning bottle stoppers and stuff like that because the threads match the Niles bottle stoppers, and they had this little offset jig. The only reason I'm using it is because just to outforce a habit. You could basically just drill a hole in your block of wood right in the middle, put your screw chuck on it, screw it on, and it'll turn it in the center, and then when I move it over, screw it into the other one, just drill another hole, screw that on there, and it'll work just fine. You don't need anything fancy to do this exercise. This really is the simplest offset turning project I can think of. So when you see me taking it on and off, understand you can just drill a hole to do this one. I just have a fancy little jig, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. So to do this project, you're going to need a block of wood about yay big. Just use my hand as a comparison for sizing. Sizing isn't really mattered, and because we're basically doing this for technique, so that you can learn and apply to other things, especially with your tool control. And I say just use whatever hardwood you have. The key thing is you do want to mark however deep your either screw chuck goes in or the screws that you're using to hold in, because you don't want to hit your screws. That is the no-go zone. So make sure it's big enough that you can make a duck on this side, and if it's a little bit smaller duck, who really cares? This is just practice. And the key thing that we're going to be doing today is focusing on tool control and not using sandpaper, so you can't fall back on that crutch. It's a little country duck, and whoever you give it to still will appreciate it. It's kind of a fun little item, but it'll really let you work on your skills. And if you set this aside, maybe in the top of a shelf for a few years and don't give it away, in a few years you can go back to it to see how good your skills have developed. Now the first step is fairly simple. Just make it round. Use your gouge or skew or whatever you want to do. Now if you are doing this as a demo, I do suggest you start out using a roughing gouge, because you can use your sacrificial fence to block chips from hitting the crowd. But because this is practice, I'm going to use my skew chisel. And I really do like using the skew chisel for roughing stuff out, because if you screw up and you get a catch, guess what? It releases. You're going wood, air, wood, air. It will release when you hit the air, so catches aren't that bad. And you really have to focus how you're using the skew to make it work as a roughing gouge. But people have been using the skew as a roughing tool for thousands of years. Just approach it, lift up, and move across to do it. Same as you always did. Touch, lift, thing with the skew is to always be moving. You don't have to be moving very fast, but you always have to be moving forward, because if you move backwards, that's when you get your catches. So I'm almost to the round. It's got a nice smooth finish, but there's a few still bandsaw marks right there. It's not quite square. So at this point, let's go ahead and work on our skew chisels. I'm going to put a nice fresh edge on it by touching my tool gauge to the bottom, my sharpening stone to the bottom bevel, moving it back and forth, getting it going, and then occasionally letting it kiss my cutting edge. Just to put a nice fresh edge on it. If you just kiss it every now and then, you know you're not going to roll it over. And you can see right here, I have sawdust all over the place, so the sawdust acts as my guide on if I've actually touched the edge. Just every now and then, kissing it. The focus I have is just keeping it moving. So there we go. Nice shiny spot on the very edge. My hollow grinding, and you can see I wear the bottom bevel away a lot more. That's the business end. That's all I care about. Then I'm going to focus. I'm coming forward, and I want to catch the shavings coming off at 45. So it's coming in this way. So I want that angle to hit it at 45, so it's going to shoot off at also 45. So I come in, touch that bevel down, rotate it over till I see a little shaving coming off, and work on my skill, keeping that bevel in the right spot, moving smoothly, getting nice curly cues coming off. Skill development, that's what we're trying tonight. One more time, because I felt a little vibration. Moving it along. And if you do that, that's like skewing your hand plane, so you should be getting the curly cues coming off and talking about a nice smooth finish. That's what we're going for. Okay, so from here we're going to do our first offset. As I said, this was a fairly simple project. Move your tailstock back. Unscrew it from your screw chuck or your jig or whatever you want. And now look at the wood and determine how far over you want the head of your duck or swan or whatever water bird you want to make is going to be. So if you want it a little bit farther forward, you either need to drill a hole in that right spot or find a hole if you're doing this jig. That's kind of why I'm using this jig, because I can just kind of eyeball the hole, and in a live audience it works out pretty well. I'm going to go with number 8. And if ever possible, you always want to bring your tailstock up, especially in offset turning, because there is going to be a weight imbalance. Notice how wobbly it's going to be. Now this is just a single axis offset turning, so it's no big deal. But if you're using like a mini lathe like I'm doing right here, you do want to change your gears, even if it's got the variable speed to the lower gear, because for some reason it just takes more horsepower to deal with offset weight. And I'm sure somebody out there can tell me why in the comments. I don't understand the physics of it, but it just seems to work out that way. So I would typically put it in the middle gear of this little jet and call it a day. Make sure your tool rest is in your preferred spot. Rotate it around. Make sure it doesn't hit. Turn your speed all the way down to its lowest setting. Turn it on. Make sure nothing bad's happening. Tighten up your tailstock if you need to. And then turn it up till it starts to shake. Now, in some instances, and not always, but you got to know your own work, if you turn it up a little faster, the shaking goes away. But I'm only doing that one because I have a tailstock here to balance it out. If it was shaking like that and I didn't have the tailstock, I would worry about it whipping off, and I wouldn't be doing this one. So, vibration somewhat goes away when I'm doing that one. My lathe is not bolted to my stand in any way because I have to carry it around for demonstrations. So you judge your speed there. So what we're going to be doing is starting to work on the head and the neck of our little duck. So let's get busy. Now this exercise, we are going to really be working on our spindle gouge skills. Now I have a kind of a wicked grind on mine, and I know that one. If you want to take a look at it, it's got fairly swept back wings, and most people will have a 40 or 45 degree angle this way. Mine is not that much. Simply because I prefer to use one tool for a bunch of different things. I don't have specialized spindle gouges for the different aspects, like turning finials versus just turning beads and coves. I just use the one tool, and this grind, I feel, gives me a little bit more versatility, and you'll see why today. So the first thing we need to do is come in and just remove a bulk of material right here. But here's the cool thing about doing offset turning. You are turning mainly air. So it's your tool control that's going to give you the results you want. You can't just ride the bevel, press that bevel down and make it a smooth cut. You have to balance everything out with your hands. Now, the angle I'm going to be using is, I think some people call it included angle or something like that. Whenever you turn the tool on its side, you look at your bevel and the direction it's going. So when I talk about angles, that's the angle I'm talking about. And when I say open, I mean with the flute fully flat, going straight up, and close when it's at 90 degrees. Now most people will start their entry at just a slightly little bit off of fully closed at 90 degrees. That way they are making sure that they are engaging the tool right below center. And we're going to do that technique as we are mainly turning air right now. So here we go. Now pardon me for doing a handheld shot, but I didn't know how to make the shot otherwise. What I'm looking at is I'm looking at my reflection down below the bed. I try and find a solid color or something, and I look for the shadow's edge. For example, if you're looking up at the floor, you can see right about there is where the edge of the wood is, even though most of it's air. And the same down below, you can slightly see the edge. That's what I'm looking for when I begin my cut. That's my cutting surface, not the center section. So you have to watch that whenever you're doing offset turning. Look for the shadows. So the technique I'm going to be using is somewhat of a push cut, meaning I'm going to push my way through the cut. I'm going to be cutting on the side of the direction I'm going. So if I'm going this way, I'm cutting on the lower edge side, and if I'm coming back, I'm cutting on the upper edge side. And because I'm going to be doing a cove cut, I'm going to be starting somewhat horizontal and kind of twisting my way up, pushing that edge through the cut until it becomes flat. You can watch my elbows and the twist as I do it. Looking for my edge, I'm completely closed. I enter a corner and I twist out. Enter a corner, twist out. Enter a corner, twist out. Using that included angle, the bevel angle, to find the wood I'm cutting and the direction I'm going in the shadows. Now this is not going to be a speed cut because you're mainly turning air. So you cannot press down into the wood, you have to kind of balance everything out. So with those 4 or 5 cuts, I hope you can see what I'm doing right there. I'm changing the angle so as it rotates, you can see that shadow line that I'm aiming for. And each cut, I'm only coming in maybe a millimeter and scooping it out. So here we go. Watch the blade angle, and hopefully with this camera angle, you can see what I'm aiming for. So I enter the wood, aiming my bevel the direction I want to go. Taking maybe a millimeter, progressing slowly. I don't have a death grip on. You can tell my knuckles are not white. And I'm slowly rotating this chisel until I exit, and I am fairly open on the exit. Let's see what the results are like. I was moving a bit quick, but that's pretty smooth. I'm seeing those lines right there are more the grains. I don't feel any ridges there. So we'll keep on doing that one until we get a cylinder for the head. Okay, you saw what was happening at the cutting edge. Now let's look at what's happening at the back of it. Because our cut is coming down a slope and transitioning, I had to change the angle that included one on the blade. So watch what happens to the back of the handle as it rotates around as I also twist to the open position. This way I'm still riding the bevel, but I'm getting a more of a skew cut, still coming off the bottom edge of the blade. But now the handle is so I can push forward this way on the tip. It is not a skewing cut like this. We'll get to that in a second. Now, one of the hardest things I find in doing this offset turning where I'm getting air most of the time is getting a smooth transition. Picking up lines, stopping, picking up the line, because unlike when you have solid wood, you can't depend upon that bevel. Picking up a line, so it's something good to practice while you have the time. Try picking up that line and coming through. So now let's see how we did. Can you tell where, well, I picked it up right there and I picked it up right there, but I did pretty good on the middle one. So I know what I can still work on. And it's just good rhythm to practice as you're going through. Okay, now I want to take a look at this. When we're entering in, we're cutting a lot of end grain right here, and that pushing action coming in this way and slicing across that end grain, it created a great finish right there. But you notice that as we transition more into the long grain, all of a sudden we're getting tear out and stuff because we are basically pushing through here and the shavings are coming off kind of like that. Whereas if we look on this side where we were using a skew chisel, where we had the blade at an angle, 45 degrees, we were getting curlicues and ending up a nice finish. So, is there a way to use a spindle gouge as a skew chisel? Well, the wood doesn't know any difference between one blade and the other, it just knows it's getting cut. So if we can get our blade at 45 degrees to the oncoming wood, and we continue to move it forward like we did with our skew chisel, it should give us a skew cut. The problem is we have this curve right here, and this is an excellent example of a time that you can transition from one cut, a pushing cut, to a skewing cut in one motion. So let's practice that with this little duck. So I'm going to try and shoot this again because the other film I did not turn out very well. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using the included angle to aim my push cut as I enter in. Now normally I would rotate the back of the handle around as I opened it up to continue my push cut. And as you can see now, the back of my handle is pointing towards the headstock. But in order to make the skew cut, I had to have the back of the handle pointing towards the tailstock. So here's where the transition starts. I start with the angle kind of pointing, the handle pointing straight back towards me. As I enter in, I come around, I'm going to open the tool up, and then I'm going to also push the back of the handle around so I can make my skew cut. The key thing I want you to pay attention to is where on the blade the shavings are coming off. So we enter in the closed position. Notice where the shavings are coming off the tip of the tool, right below center. I work my way down, aiming with the included angle of the bevel. I begin opening up my tool, and I bring the back of the handle towards the headstock, back towards me, using my body as a brace. It is braced against my body. But as I come back towards the curvature to transition towards the long grain, I begin rotating the handle towards the tailstock. And notice how the shavings start coming off the side of the blade instead of the tip. And then I move it along the end, the long grade. And the shavings are nice curly cues as if I was using a skew chisel. Now, if you need to go back and pick it up, because I did such a poor job there, because I was looking at the camera at the same time, making sure you could see it, basically I can touch the bevel down, rotate it around until I see shavings coming off, and now I know I've got the skew chisel engaged, and come through, and smooth out your cut. Notice no more tear out. I still got a little wave in there because I still need to work on my skill. So the next step, let's create a head for the duck. Now I don't know about you, but I think the hardest thing to do is turning a perfect sphere freehand. I've never done one perfectly. I mean, I always see something a little bit off on it. But for a duck, having the head a perfect sphere isn't that important, but if you get there, great. So might as well try it. Now, perfect sphere, same size this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. So pick your dividers, set its width, and then you can use that to kind of set your four sides. Now you want to leave a little bit on the end for the tailstock, and we'll cut that off at the very end. So now we have the dimensions for the bottom and the top of the duck's head if we were going for a perfect sphere. Hey, it's a goal to shoot for. Now, if you have a shorter tool rest that you can really get in there, great and wonderful. I have one, I just don't want to go get it because having that distance out here so far, it's not unsafe and it will demand more tool control on the back end for me. So I'm using this as a learning experience, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it out there that far. So here we go. I'm going to start out making a V-cut, having my tool at roughly 45 degrees open, coming in from both sides. Give me clearance until I get to the bottom of what I want the head to be. And then I'm going to start out almost completely open, riding the bevel on the top, close it up a little bit, and then work the bead around. Now remember, that point right there would be if we finished the cut. Obviously, we're not going to finish the cut, otherwise we'd be cutting the duck's head off. On this side, we are going to finish the cut, so I can just ease my way around. And remember, the perfect curve is a balance of keeping the cutting edge, rotating around, lifting the handle up, and bringing the edge around so that the included angle will end up at perfectly straight across. Lots to balance here. Doesn't help when your lathe shakes. It's looking more like a Lego head to me. But it's good practice. Okay, so now we got the last cut to clean up the tail feathers, the back, the transition, and bring it into the bottom of the head. So let's see how much our practicing has gotten. We got one shot at it. Well, we can do it again, but you'll just make the duck's neck longer and longer and longer. Okay, I look for my included angle. I aim it with the back of the handle out here. I'm going to brace it against my body to give me more control. I'm going to transition at the end, and then I'm going to move my entire body to do that one. So I'm going to make sure my feet can handle all the motion in their current position. And here we go. Inner, Really focus on trying to get it smooth. Yes, you're turning air, so there's a difficulty there, but we can't use sandpaper on this, or we're not going to. Transitioning through the bottom. We got a little bit of vibration in the tool handle. How's that going to translate? Are we going to have to do this again? Coming through, opening it up, coming over to the side of the blade, moving our entire body around. I lost the cutting edge right there. Transitioning through. Let's see our results. I got a little bit right there, and I can still see a few tool marks here, so let me go back through. I'm going to bring the angle of my blade more past 45 degrees by bringing the outside out. Using knowledge I have from my skew chisel. Whoops, little catch. See how he goes. A little bit better. Okay, now I do have some tool marks here along the side. And now, can you see the tool marks I have on the side? Those are just ugly. So that maybe because this is end grain, I can use a bowl turning technique with my skew gouge and do a skewing scraping cut on that to get it off. The problem is that we are also doing air at the same time. So what is a scraping cut? Well, it's just approaching the wood at a less than 90-degree angle. So if I can get this bottom wing right here angled to just under 90 degrees, that's a scraping cut. Now to get a skewing scraping cut, I would drop the bottom of my handle so that as it approaches the wood and scrapes it, it's actually scraping at an angle. And I will pull it out the same way, watching the angle. I should get tiny, tiny, tiny curlicues. Let's see how it's going to work. Nice, smooth cut. Let me clear out my flute. It's way negative now. I'm going to rotate it open a little bit. And the wind's blowing off the shavings, but they are coming off at tiny curlicues. Let's see what we're doing. Hey, those tool marks are going away. Pretty cool. See if I can change the camera angle. Okay, I'm going to try and see if I can do this looking through the camera viewfinder, because I think it's important you see how I'm doing that angle transition. So I start out way below 90, and I rotate it ever so slightly. Then I'm bringing it up, and as you can see, we're getting these slight curlicues coming off because the wood is hitting the blade at a skew. So I'm getting the skewing, scraping cut. It's just an easy way to clean up your work without sanding. One more time. Way below 90, open it up until it starts getting the scraping cuts. Then just slowly drag it back while dropping the back of the handle. Get it. You do not want to go past the 90 though, because you'll get a catch that way. This is one of those times where borderline disaster will give you the best results. Okay, let's take a look at it. Oh, that's just smooth. Now that you've seen how we did that, you think there's any way we can use that same technique on this rounded portion? Well, I'm sure we can. We just got to think it through. This section right here would be pretty easy doing it open, but as you come over here, all of a sudden, the wood will be hitting in a positive angle. So to create the negative angle of a scraping, we actually have to roll the gouge over the top and then come around so that we have that negative angle. So we're actually rolling it on top so that we get the skewed scraping action. So let's see what happens when we do that. Because I got some ugly lines in there. So I touch it, I look at the shavings, and as I come around, I kind of rotate it over. Same from the other side. Touch it, kind of rotate it over. Now ideally I would have a short tool rest. I just need to go find it. But we're just practicing right now, so no big deal. If I want to create a higher angle in the scrape, I just need to come out more towards the tip, as the curve right there will give me the slighter higher skewing angle. Just don't hit the top wing. See how we're doing. Making a little progress. Okay, from here I'm just going to remove the tailstock, finish off the top of the duck's head, and at this point in time I can move my tool rest way over here to get a little bit more refined cut. Make sure everything's okay. Turn the speed down because you do not have that tail support, and then just take very light cuts. A little bit too close for me. From there, it's just a matter of taking it off your center, your offset hole, and putting it back on the center to finish up the body. Now you'll notice my duck's neck is more towards the center, but we can fix that when we put it back on that center hole by just bringing down the body a little bit. So I'm hoping with my dark t-shirt you'll be able to see where the shadows are, and that's what I'm going to be lining up to blend this neck in with the body. T-shirt, can you see? Okay, here we go. Tool rest a little low for me. Coming in, shifting the handle of my tool over so I can make a skewing cut. Once I start hitting air, I gotta pay a close attention. See how we're doing. A little bit more to go. Getting closer with the blending. I'm going to try that scraping action to see if I can get just that much better. Just make sure that point doesn't go forward because you don't want that to be the part that touches. think that might have been too aggressive. Let's see. The blending's getting pretty good. I'm liking that. I think I'll just work on that transition and cut the duck off. Now, you wouldn't think a parting tool would require much skill, but what I've found, especially in porous woods like this pecan, is that if you come in on it and you just kind of wiggle it, the 2 points will kind of sever fibers on both sides, and then the middle will scoop it out. Plus, if you want a really smooth shaving, sharpen the edge of it too. That way, as you go in, it won't just tear out fibers on the edge. So to go deep, I just kind of wiggle it back and forth and let the corners do their work. And then as I'm coming in that last cut, I kind of let the sides scrape. So hopefully I get a better finish. So I have a little stub on end. You'd be tempted to sand it off, but remember, no sanding. Notice how when I drag the side of the parting tool on the edge, I did sever the end grain fibers pretty nicely. If your skew is sharp, you can just whittle that thing off to get a smooth finish. Just pivot off of your thumb. Now the bill on these things couldn't be any simpler. The key secret is, no matter which way you want your duck to look, down, up, or anything, just always aim for the center of the head, and it'll all work out just fine. I think I'm going to have this duck looking up. So I put the brad point on the duck, kind of aim towards the center, and just drill a little hole. I use a brad point so it has a starting point. If I use the other kind, it might run around and I don't want to risk going into my hand. The brad point just kind of keeps it stable. Just a little ways in. After that, chuck up a thin piece of wood and turn yourself a bill. So there you go, a bevy of little ducks for your nieces and nephews to play with. They're just little fun little things. It was mainly just for practice. It gives you something to do, but it could tell you how well you could go with your tool marks. I will tell you I did a little bit better when I wasn't filming, as you can see there. None of these are sanded yet, because I generally don't sand in the demos. If you leave a little button on bottom, you can get them to kind of rock in the water if you want to. Just play around with them. Again, this is a skill development. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, please consider liking, subscribing, telling your friends, all those social media stuff. And if you want to patronize us a little bit more, visit our website, wortheffort.com. We have a bunch of stuff available for sale, including a line of custom t-shirts, plus a lot of the boxes and products we make in our YouTube videos, cabinets, bowls, all that kind of stuff. My sister even makes some really cool fused glasswork that you can inlay into your own woodworking. So get out in the shop, practice around with your tools, make a few ducks, and remember, it is always worth the effort to learn, create, and share with others. Y'all be safe and have fun.